I now give the floor to Ms. Izumi Nakamitsu.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, distinguished members of the Security Council, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, allow me to express my gratitude to Kenya for convening this very important meeting and for giving me the opportunity to brief on the occasion of the release of the Secretary General's biannual report on small arms and light weapons to the Security Council. I applaud the Security Council's commitment to address the issue of small arms and light weapons on a regular basis. This is the third time that I am personally briefing the Council on this agenda item, but the biannual consideration of small arms began 12 years ago with the 2007 presidential statement. Since then, the Security Council has continued to recognize that the illicit flow and excessive accumulation of small arms and light weapons compromise the effectiveness of its ability to discharge its primary responsibility to maintain international peace and security. It was in this context that the Security Council requested the Secretary General to report on small arms on a biannual basis, beginning in 2008. Since this request, there have been 7 reports of the Secretary General on this topic. It is important to acknowledge that there are common themes that run throughout all the reports of the Secretary General on this critical issue, including the most recent one, as contained in document S/2021/839. Let me highlight a few points from this report. I will start with the focus of today's discussion, the need to address the threats posed by illicit flows of small arms and light weapons in context of peace operations. The misuse, illicit transfer, and destabilizing accumulation of small arms and light weapons and their ammunition remain defining factor in undermining peace and security at the national, regional, and global levels, and have deeply aggravated situations for vulnerable populations already suffering from conflict. In contexts where United Nations peace operations have been mandated, illicit flows and easy availability of arms can exacerbate and sustain conflict dynamics, render arms embargoes ineffective, endanger peacekeepers, humanitarian workers, and local populations, and complicate the implementation of peace agreements. Hence, I commend the Council's increasing consideration of the issue of small arms in its work, including the inclusion of arms-related provisions in recent peace operations mandates in Abyei, Central African Republic, Democratic Republic of the Congo, Haiti, Libya, Mali, Somalia, Sudan, South Sudan, and Yemen. The growing number of resolutions that take account of weapons and ammunition management and small arms and light weapons control measures is indicative of the UN's role in supporting to the control of those weapons to build and sustain peace. I encourage the Security Council to also integrate weapons and ammunition management considerations in its work on conflict prevention. Inadequately maintained stockpiles of weapons and ammunition constitute serious humanitarian hazards and are a known source of weapons diversion, which negatively impacts peace and security beyond conflict and post-conflict settings. Internationally recognized tools such as the Modular Small Arms Control Implementation Compendium and International Ammunition Technical Guidelines are increasingly used by states for effective weapons and ammunition management. This has been underscored in the publication 8 Memoir, Options for Mainstreaming Weapons and Ammunition Management in Decisions of the Security Council. The aid memoir was specifically developed by the Office for Disarmament Affairs to assist the Security Council to accurately and comprehensively reflect state-of-the-art practices related to weapons and ammunition management into relevant decisions of the Council. The aid memoir has just been updated, and the second edition is available now publicly. Of importance to the Security Council are also the illicit transfers of small arms and light weapons in the context of arms embargo violations, which remain concerning. I also note the Security Council's efforts to support states in the strengthening of national security services through adjustments to relevant arms embargoes. Such efforts have provided an opportunity to introduce weapons and ammunition management-related commitments and measures that can address potential risks of arms diversion by security services, as well as illicit arms proliferation and misuse. Another welcome development is the Security Council's employment of weapons and ammunition management as part of the benchmark assessment of arms embargoes. It is important to note that available standards and guidelines must be applied in such contexts to further improve national and regional implementation and enforcement of embargoes. Mr. President, distinguished members of the Security Council, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to encourage the Security Council to fully integrate considerations of weapons and ammunition into its work, not only on country-specific, but also on thematic discussions. This includes addressing the arms crime terrorism nexus as one interrelated and multifaceted security threat that requires complementary approaches and responses. Small arms control measures, in particular the development and implementation of border security and management strategies, efforts to detect and seize parts and components of weapons and ammunition, enhanced stockpile management, and the fight against the illicit manufacture of weapons are effective tools to disrupt the supply of illicit small arms and light weapons to terrorists. Another dimension is that of the nexus between sustainable development and small arms, which is firmly anchored in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Global leadership, including that of the Security Council, will be vital to the decade of action and can support capacity-building efforts among states to gather information and report on the number of seized and collected small arms and light weapons. This will allow better tracking of the progress against SDG Indicator 16.4.2 with a view to achieving a significant reduction in illicit arms flows by 2030. Thematic discussions on issues such as children in armed conflict and women, peace and security agenda are also important opportunities to reflect on conversions with small arms related issues as part of the Security Council program of work. Children continue to bear the brunt of armed conflict, often enabled and prolonged by the widespread availability of weapons. Thus, all small arms and light weapons control initiatives should be carried out with due attention to their potential impacts on children's rights and vice versa. Conventional arms control, including small arms and light weapons control measures, are relevant to all 4 pillars of Women, Peace and Security Agenda: participation, protection, prevention, and relief and recovery, including in context of conflict-related sexual violence. The Security Council can further strengthen that conversions by integrating the collection and analysis of sex and age disaggregated data on small arms and light weapons in related mandates, support civil society organizations, especially women's organizations, and encourage states to streamline national action plans to ensure more active exchange of information amongst focal points for these respective portfolios. And there are new and emerging themes related to small arms and light weapons and their ammunition, which warrant the attention of the Security Council and member states. New and emerging technologies on illicit trafficking and the production of small arms, light weapons, their parts and components, and ammunition may pose novel challenges and opportunities to the effectiveness of small arms control measures, and thus should be seriously considered in both global policy discussions as well as operational programming. States have also continued to express concerns over the illicit reactivation of poorly deactivated small arms. In response to this growing threat, the United Nations has issued specific guidance in a dedicated module of the Modular Small Arms Control Implementation Compendium, or MOSAIC. Moreover, we are seeing a shift of weapon purchases, in particular their parts and components, through the darknet and through online platforms, resulting in a significant increase in the use of postal and courier services to traffic these items, making detection and criminal investigations of the illicit transfer more difficult. An early adoption of measures to address those emerging challenges would ensure that small arms control remains effective and responds to these new realities. States, civil society, and relevant expert organizations are also encouraged to consider how climate change affects the use of conventional weapons and how conventional arms availability and use affect climate-related security risks. A growing number of states have advocated for concrete, more consistent action to address the potential impact on peace and security posed by climate change, including how this can facilitate illicit weapons flows. Mr. President, distinguished members of the Security Council, ladies and gentlemen, in his agenda for disarmament, the Secretary General laid out his priorities for the impacts of the destabilizing accumulation, illicit transfer, and misuse of small arms and light weapons. This includes advancing country-level approaches to small arms problems, integrating arms into conflict prevention and management, managing poorly maintained stockpiles, and rethinking unconstrained military spending. All this requires a deeper institutional understanding of the small arms problems and challenges, as well as creative and comprehensive solutions to address them. In line with Secretary General's priorities and with a view to providing effective, efficient, and coherent United Nations assistance, 2 concrete initiatives have been launched. First, partners of the UN Coordinating Action on Small Arms, in short, CASA, are developing system-wide guidance on country-level approaches to integrate small arms control into the Common Country Analysis and Sustainable Development Frameworks, in line with the guiding principle of national ownership. In addition, the Saving Lives entity, or SALIENT for short, is now operational as an immediate response facility within the Peacebuilding Fund and has begun allocation of grants to catalyze more comprehensive approaches to small arms and armed violence reduction efforts in several countries. Considerable efforts have been undertaken at the global, regional, sub-regional, and national levels in support of small arms and light weapons control, including in the framework of the Programme of Action on Small Arms and Light Weapons and its international tracing instrument. Let me highlight, in particular, the outcome of the 7th Biennial Meeting of States, which of course was chaired by Kenya, and the Firearms Protocol to the Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime, as well as the Arms Trade Treaty. The United Nations will continue to advocate for the universalization of Firearms Protocol and the Arms Trade Treaty, and the full and effective implementation of politically binding instruments such as the Programme of Action on Small Arms and International Tracing Instrument. In the regional context, the United Nations will support the implementation of the decision by the African Union Commission to extend until 2030 the master roadmap of practical steps to silence the guns in Africa, including the voluntary surrender of illicitly owned weapons by civilians under the September Amnesty Month program. In this regard, I also welcome the efforts made in the establishment and the implementation of regional policy frameworks and strategies on small arms, among them the Western Balkan Roadmap, the Caribbean Roadmap, and the 5-year plan of implementation of the ECOWAS Convention on Small Arms and Light Weapons. Those mechanisms reflect regional realities, priorities, and ownership, and direct the work of the regional centers in Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean, and Asia and the Pacific. Mr. President, distinguished members of the Security Council, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to conclude my briefing today by reiterating the need for mainstreaming small arms and light weapons considerations across the work of the Security Council, and highlight a recommendation from the Secretary General's report, which is particularly pertinent to today's discussion. Wherever a mission is mandated to provide support to the host state and competent national authorities in processing of recovered weapons and the treatment of ammunition recovered from the illicit sphere, the Security Council is encouraged to consider the establishment or designation of a dedicated component, unit, or cell within the mission. This would enable the United Nations peace operations to be substantially more involved in supporting the systematic collection, centralization, and analysis of small arms-related data, and ensure evidence-based policymaking and programming on the ground. I hope the Security Council will consider such measures to further maintain international peace and security. I thank you very much for your attention.
I thank Ms. Nakamitsu for her briefing.